everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Or welcome if you're new. Today I am continuing on with my swatching of the SCHMINCKE HORADAM super granulating water sets from the dot card that I got from Jackson's in the UK. So it is time to pull out my trusty old swatch book and we're gonna get going on this. Today we are going to be looking at the third set on this chart, which is the Deep Sea set. So as you can imagine, there's probably going to be a lot of blues, and that's okay because blue is one of my favorite colors. So let's dive into it, shall we? Starting off with Deep Sea Violet, it is a 2 pigment color, Pigment Blue 29 and Pigment Brown 33. This one definitely seemed to re-wet pretty well from the dot. Some of the other colors I've had problems with, but this one was okay. And it's a really nice, deep, beautiful, dark, granulating, purpley violet color. Probably my favorite out of this set, actually, I'd have to say. When I was first swatching it out, I can't really see a whole lot of color separation between the pigments. Once I started to mix it up with extra water and stuff, I could see a little bit more of the color separation. But it's really well watching it dry that the color separation really pops once it's dry. You can definitely see the difference between the blue and the brown pigments there. Okay, on to Deep Sea Indigo. This is also a dual pigment color. It's Pigment Violet 62 and Pigment Green 18. I think Pigment Green 18 is Viridian, but we'll take a look at that in a bit. This one was much more difficult, or at least it felt much more difficult to re-wet from the sample, but it could be just that it is a much more transparent and softer color. I definitely don't feel that this is an indigo. I am very used to indigos being a very dark inky blue, and this is a very soft pastel sort of color. And again, like the indigo, when it was wet and I was first swatching it out, you can't see a whole lot of the pigment separation, but then as it dries, there is a very distinct separation between the violet and the green pigments. It's a very pretty color overall, although I just don't think it's an indigo, but it's very pretty. Okay, the third one, Deep Sea Blue. Now this is actually a 3 pigment color. We've got PG50, PV16, and PB29. This one re-wet pretty well from the dot chart. And probably of this particular set of 5, this is the most opaque, I think. And it's just a nice, bright, cheery, soft blue. I don't know, can you make something bright and soft at the same time? I believe this is. It sort of reminds me a little bit of maybe a light cobalt blue, or maybe a cerulean, or somewhere in between the two. This one I didn't notice much color separation at all. Obviously it was quite granulating, which is lovely, but the colors, like the colors of the pigments, must be close enough in tonal value that when it dries you don't see a whole lot of color separation, which is fine. You don't need to see the color separation in all of them. It is still a very pretty blue. fingerprint right in there. I tried to see if it was dry. It was not. But you can see it is somewhat opaque and very granular, but there's not a whole lot of color separation. Okay, moving on to Deep Sea Green. And this is another dual pigment color, Pigment Green 18 and Pigment Blue 29. This one, the dot, you can sort of see there's a big blob of binder that was beside it, so there wasn't actually a whole lot of pigment to work with. The dot was half binder, but I did get to play with it somewhat. So again, I think that this one is misnamed a little bit because this definitely doesn't feel like a green to me. But I suppose if you compare it to the other colors in this set, it is greener, but it definitely still feels blue. Actually, it feels more like a aqua turquoisey color. Going on when it's wet, again, like most of the colors, it's just a nice even color. And then once it is drying, you can start to see some of the separation between the blue and the green pigments. It's not quite as drastic as some of the other colors, but it's there. And of course, it granulates nicely. This would probably be my second favorite color, I think, out of this set. Okay, and the last one in this set, Deep Sea Black, another 3 pigment color. And we've got Pigment Black 11, Pigment Blue 74, and another Pigment Blue 35. I'm not actually familiar with these blue pigments, so it'll be interesting to take a look at those. I also felt like I was having a hard time reactivating this one, but again, I think it maybe just might be a softer, more transparent paint. I often wonder when I'm doing these dot charts if this is the case, or if you actually had the tube of paint, that it would be a much more vibrant color. It feels a little bit more like a dark gray than a black, but almost immediately you could start to see some of the separation between the blue and black pigments. It's not drastic because again, they're both dark colors, but it's there. And I noticed it more in my mass tone at the top there at first. And then when I pulled it down, it's like all the black pigment came down into my wash. And then I went back in and of course played with it and added more pigment. So as it was drying, we got to see a little bit more of the separation between the blue and the black, and also some of the granulation setting in there. Okay, let's take a look at the pigment breakdown of these colors. Deep Sea Violet, Pigment Blue 29. We've seen this a lot. It's a very common color. I already know it's ultramarine blue. Shows up in a lot of these other super granulating colors. It's also a very common color to have on your palette. And a lot of people do have it, and I recommend it's one that you get. And it doesn't really matter the medium, really. Ultramarine is a great color. French ultramarine here. It's a granular dark blue, a little bit on the warm side. It's great for deepening colors and making mixes. And then the other color, Pigment Brown 33, is Mahogany Brown. I've seen this a few times too in a couple of other the super granulating colors. It's another beautiful, warm little granulating color. It's one I've never really used, but it's showing up a lot. Maybe I should use it more. But the reddish brown and the blue together do make this very deep violet-y color. Actually, in fact, this one here is called Deep Sea Indigo. This looks more like an indigo to me than this does. I wouldn't know how to describe this color. It's pretty, I'll give you that, but it's not what I would think of as an indigo. Anyways, the pigments in this, Pigment Violet 62 and PG 18. I think PG 18 is Viridian. Pigment Violet 62. We've seen this already. It was actually in the Volcano Violet. So PV 62 is the Cobalt Violet hue. A nice granulating neutral violet color. And yes, PG 18 is Viridian. I didn't really realize that Viridian was a granular color, but it does granulate just a little bit. Here in my test swatch from my dot chart. It's a very lovely color. It's got great granulation and noticeable color separations. I mean, it is beautiful. I just wouldn't call it an indigo. Deep Sea Blue. This is most definitely a blue. This is very granular and probably the most opaque of this particular set. You can see the opaqueness spots here in my little black swatch, and I think that comes from the PG 50, which I think is cobalt turquoise. But yeah, let's look here. PG 50, yeah, cobalt turquoise. So it's a nice, lovely opaque turquoise color. And PV 16, which is manganese violet. It is a very beautiful, warm violet color, very granulating, very pretty indeed. Those two colors on their own would probably look very pretty as well. And then also we've got the Pigment Blue 29, which of course again is ultramarine. Okay, moving on to Deep Sea Green. Again, this isn't really what I would call a green. I'd maybe call it a turquoise, but compared to the other colors in this set, it's definitely greener than all the rest of them. And again, we've got PG 18, which we've already looked at, which is the Viridian green, and again Pigment Blue 29, ultramarine blue. So ultramarine blue has showed up in 3 of the 5 colors this set. This color too, also very lovely, very granular, and the color separation is there, though it is a little bit more subtle because the Viridian and the ultramarine are a little bit closer in tonal strength, but you can see them if you look closely. Okay, Deep Sea Black. It's actually, I was really expecting this to be a more intense color. So again, I don't know if it's one of those things where I just had my little dot wasn't good on my dot chart, but it's very weak considering the colors that it's got in it. It's got the Pigment Black 11, which is Mars Black, I believe. Yep, Mars Black. Again, our neutral granulating black, very common color. And then it's got 2 blues. It's got a 74 and a 35. So 74 Cobalt Blue Deep and 35 Cobalt Azure. But I guess these 2 blues themselves, they don't look super intense. Like they do seem quite translucent and soft. And then I guess if there was only just a little bit of that Mars Black put in it, which again, if you look at it, is not a really opaque color. So I guess it sort of makes sense that this is a very thin, washy color. I just really thought that it would be a little bit more intense considering there are 3 pigments in it. So I would actually call this more like a deep sea gray. But it's pretty cool, and you can definitely see the color separation between the black and the blues in this one. Some of the other blacks in their granulating sets, you can't really see so much the separation in the different pigments. You definitely can in this one. But yeah, that's our look at our deep sea and colors. And there you go. That is our deep sea set of super granulating watercolors by SCHMINCKE. Overall, I did enjoy this set. Like I said, there was a couple colors that felt a little on the weak side for me. You may like those softer colors, so that might be totally fine for you. I just happen to be a fan of the really bright, vibrant colors. If you like these types of videos, please consider subscribing. My channel is dedicated to art-related videos, and I have quite a few things to swatch out, largely watercolors. But I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a great day. And until the next one, bye-bye.